All right, here we
Does it
go.
really make that big of a difference?
Yes, I think it does. Anything you got dragging through the water. So if you pull that, let's say you leave your board all the way down, you've got that drag that's dragging through the water. So pull your board up and you might as well just put your hand in the water, right, to stop you. I mean, that's similar.
Well, the reason why I asked is just remembering to put it back down when you round the leeward mark. What do you use to remind you?
Well,
A swift kick in the ass by his crew.
Experience, pain, suffering.
If you stick to a routine or habit, I'll say it gets done, and
most of the time.
yeah, it's when if you get fouled up with if you have other boats and stuff going on at the leeward mark and you lose track, that's when you spend a whole leg of the knack.
I would
eating
strongly
without
encourage you
support.
to actually make it your crew's responsibility.
So what I've tried to tend to do is when I'm crew and I ask when they put their hands on this, and this never works, but it's good for me. When you put your hands on the pole to take it down, yell board, and that's a good reminder to drop that board. I haven't done that in a while, but everybody that sailed centerboard boats where the boards go up and down has forgotten to drop the board for every time. I mean, it just happens. And I tell you what, when you start realizing you can't point, the first thing you need to do is look at your board. Is it down? But, you know, just get into a habit. I think Carol said it best, right? Carol said it best. You just have something as a reminder every time.
I just make it, you know, you like to make the habit. I actually always try to always dump the board first, let it down first. And you may be 30 yards or something from that mark, but I know if I forget it, you're more messed up. You know, so the 10, 20 yards, whatever, be a better sailor in some other way, but it's like, okay, board now. So that you can forget. The rest of it, you'll see the sail is up or down or,
Right.
you know, the other messes.
Yeah, but don't go to the situation or the thought process of not raising your board just so you don't forget it to put it down. Just you got to do it and then start getting the habit of make it part of your mental checklist. Is it down or not? You know, or have your crew help you, or have that as part of your crew's responsibility.
On my particular boat, it has a hard time going down when the boat's loaded up.
Yes.
Especially when the wind comes around to a beam and I don't have it down far enough and I start crabbing sideways. It's
That's every boat, by the way.
Yeah, that's just not your boat. That's every boat. So that's why you do it when you're going downwind. And get it back into the position. I got 2 dots on my centerboard trunk here, rollers, where it needs to go to. And so if it's not there, one of my crew's responsibility is pull the centerboard line up to give it slack, and then use your 2 thumbs to roll that guy right into position before you get to the leeward mark. Sometimes it happens right when you're at the leeward mark too, but that's part of it.
right.
So where are those dots? Are you talking about rolling it far enough back?
Yep, I got 2 dots on here. The previous boat owner probably drilled holes and put something in there as marker. So he's got 2 right here, and so my board is shimmed right to that spot.
That's a good point, because if you're not shimmed to that spot, maybe it wouldn't work as well, would it?
It wouldn't work, I guess not. I mean, it wouldn't be in that spot, so it's shimmed into that position right there.
If it's not there, do you feel like you can tell the difference helm-wise? Or
No,
perhaps not?
No, I don't. It's probably more of a mental thing
Yeah.
for me.
Yep.
Again, just to repeat something we said, okay, so if you're dead downwind, you want the board all the way up.
Yeah,
I'm the board raiser, I'm the crew.
Yeah, so
But what you
I'll
said
have
is-
that down maybe almost level to the top.
But if the spinnaker goes and it's more, so my visual cue is if the spinnaker is now more on the side, then let the board down just a little
Just
bit.
a little bit, or else she'll be
So I'd never
sliding.
change it while we're going downwind, never occurred to me to do that.
Yeah, that gives you a little bit of
Yeah, that makes
bite
sense.
against the wind. Because
Yeah.
now, because you're looking up and your mag tapes now are probably flowing like this.
Right.
Your pole's forward, you're trying to drive to a certain location. And if your board is all the way up, you'll look against the shore and your boat will just be sliding sideways.
And of course, then if we turn back dead downwind, going up again.
Exactly.
I will also, and given I don't have nearly as much experience as these other people, but the other time where I've often had to lower the board is in close quarters. And so if you're going to have to be in some sort of a tactical situation with other boats, you're going to need a little bit more board in order to be able to turn the boat and track accordingly.
We were in
And
exactly
so-
that situation, a different boat, different regatta 3-4 weeks ago, but we were very light wind. We were in a little bit of a cluster, going downwind, and there was boats coming toward us. And Robert, all of a sudden, he's like, "I got no steerage, I got no steerage," and we crept up a little bit, and we just brushed the boat that was coming toward us. It was very frustrating. Sounds like if we would have dropped the board, he might have had it, we would have missed it.
And it doesn't have to be a lot. It's not a lot. I mean,
yeah, right, but our board was up. That's
Right.
a really good point.
Okay, what else here? Roll tacking. So, in light breeze, maybe not this light, but who here roll tacks their boat?
Try.
Yeah, you really
We are
need
you.
you really need to practice that. You need to get out with your crew tomorrow before the first race. I mean, that's another thing. So the first start tomorrow is noon.
Yes.
Invariably, you see somebody leaving the dock at 12:30, 12:20. Why are you laughing?
No, we're always last from the dock. But
Okay.
the time when we get out there ahead of time for practice is the times we've done the best.
Okay, but yeah,
Your
so
point.
so my point is, get off the dock at least an hour before that first gun. Get out there, practice your boat handling, work on your sail trim, work on your boat speed, do all those things you need to do. Practice roll tacks with your crew and your weight and your balance and all that stuff. Do that and watch the conditions. You're out there, right? You're going to be racing in an hour. And generally, the conditions are usually, it's a good indication of what's going to happen. I say that generally, except if you're on Lake Hartwell and Lake Norman.
Sure. Any lake.
But you get out there and practice, use that time. Watch your compass. What's the wind doing? Is it going right? Is it going left? Write those numbers down. Pay attention to what's going on. You got a great electronic tool here. I always say this is the most expensive $500 timing device I've ever had. Because sometimes you have to really force yourself to pay attention to it and use it. Now, is it going to make every decision for you? Should it tell you when to tack? Absolutely not. But it's just part of that decision-making process and that information you're going to use to help feed into your decision. You may decide not to tack. You may be getting knocked. We were at Lake Murray Labor Day weekend, and this is no lie. This is no lie. We're lifted 30. We need to tack now. And that is no lie what was going on. And the reason why is because the breeze was over to the right. The further you went to the left, you were just being lifted off the world. You're never going to get to the windward mark by staying on that tack. You needed to tack and dig deep, dig 30 down to get over to the right and then get lifted back up. So the reason I'm bringing all that up is not because of that particular situation, but only use the compass to help you make a decision. Don't let it guide your decision for you. Use that information against and everything else that's going on in front of you to make the decision. So roll tacking is you want to heel that boat up as hard as you can, right? And then to roll it back, to use the momentum of the boat to get your sails into the right position to help you turn the boat as well, right? So do we want to talk through that a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Roll tacking is primarily a lighter wind maneuver, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if it's 10 knots or starting a white cap, you don't really want to be worrying about roll tacking the boat anymore. At that point, you're just trying to get through a nice turn with the boat to get the sails back into the position they need to be in.
So you're saying at 8 knots you would still try and roll tack?
Yeah,
8
I mean,
knots of wind speed?
if you see Joe and myself and John and myself this weekend, we're going to be trying to roll that thing up as high as we possibly can get it, and then get back on the other side to flatten yourself up. Use your board and your momentum of your sails to drive yourself to windward. And I'm not going to be able to give you the best technical reason on why, but you're basically using the board, you're driving it against the water to help drive you forward. The same reason why, you see the lasers and all the people that they're roll tacking those boats way up to get to the point to just drive the board against the water to drive yourself forward. That's probably the worst.
Can you show us? Can you show us with your
Yeah.
body?
So the
be on starboard tack.
Do you
Where are
want crew in there?
Huh?
Do you want crew?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, who wants? No, we'll just kind of pretend. Sean, you want to Up here?
Sure. You know what? Get someone who's a good crew that can actually
Come on,
get up
Carol.
there without hurting your boat.
If you tell me what and when.
Yeah, no, that would be, it'd be better if you brought your beer with you.
I can do that.
I wanted to see you and Kreidler in the boat together. I was going to take a picture.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
Getting on the boat. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
That's a beer tank. It doesn't have upper body strength like you do. I couldn't have got in there. I'd have to roll over the.
So let's say we're on starboard tack.
The iron starboard is blowing 3 knots.
It's blowing 3. It's really light, and so he's going to probably be hiking. He'll have the centerboard here. We'll be down here.
Well, if it's only 3, I'm not going to on that side.
Well, you may be. You may. We'll be
Assume you're both
Yeah,
on this
the
side.
breeze is coming here. We're trying to hike. We're hiking.
Starboard tack.
Leeward hiking.
Yeah, we're leeward hiking. We're trying to get the boat heeled up. And so he's working with the trim. We're trying to go. And so typically what happens? My main will be out. Obviously, my main will be out here. And then as we start the tack, I'm going to want us to really, both of us, really as hard as we can, because we're going to end up with a tack, let's say, over in that direction, right?
Yes.
So our boat's going to go from this angle to basically pointing to that angle. So we're going to hike it up as hard as we can this way to heel it up. And why are we doing that? Why are we going to do that?
Bow to turn the boat.
Exactly. So we're using our weight to turn the boat. And in order to do that as well, I may not have enough breeze to do this, but if I do, I'll sheet in a little bit. That'll also give me the ability to heel the boat up a little higher.
The main, not the jib.
Did I say? I was talking about the main. I meant the main. I didn't say it, but so I'll sheet in a little bit. We'll hike as hard as we can to promote that roll. And then what I always do is I sail with a lot of juniors and a lot of people that may not know. Obviously, this isn't Joe Brake or some of the other guys that are really experienced. They may not know exactly where I want their weight. So I use a count method. I use 3, 2, 1. I use 3, and Joe and I came up with this just to kind of help our balance and our positioning. I'll use 3 to initiate the tack. So we're starting the attack at 3. I'll sheet in. We'll heel the boat up as high as we can, as hard as we can, and I'll start turning the boat. So the boat starts coming around. We're still heeled up really high, and I'll use 2 to say we're head to wind. At that point, my crew hasn't moved and I haven't moved still. So we're 2. We're head to wind. And then as we go through the wind, we're now on the other side of the breeze, but we haven't completed the tack yet. We're still over here hiked up. At 2, we'll start thinking about moving across. And then when I say and 1, that's when the 1 is when we're going to be in that new position now on port at our new heading, which would be that direction right here. When I say and, I tell my crew, start going to the other side as hard as you can with all your weight. Now it's really hard for the crew because he's also got to mess with the jib at that time. The skipper's just got the main and the tiller, right? But I'll do a 3, 2. When I say and, then both of us would move over to this side. I take the main and tiller behind, and then we throw our weight out as hard as we can. I mean, literally as hard as we possibly can to get that boat to roll up. Now at this point, depending on the breeze, the boat should now be heeled up on the other side, right? Yep. Be over here. And if depending on the breeze and how much I need to flatten it out, I'll come up, or I won't come up if there's nothing, right? If there's 1.5, we'll just stay here. And if we need to flatten out, I may come back a little bit to flatten and then come back to the leeward side, or I may come back all the way to here where he's hiking now. Maybe we're in a new puff, and I now can steer from the top side. But he is now trimmed in. I've trimmed in or maybe eased off a little bit, because when I'm going through the hike, let's say we're in 5 and I got enough breeze actually to work the sails and everything, okay? So when I trim in hard and we're on this side, that promotes the boat to heel up. It allows me to turn it a little bit easier. When I get to the other side, I have to ease that back off. I can't be sheeted in all the way. I have to ease it back off into its original position where the main needs to be. Roll the boat back flat, and then you're off and going in your new direction again. That's really hard to describe sitting on land.
With no sails.
Yeah, with no sails on. But Joe's got a great video. I don't know if you've seen it out there. Joe Brake and Trish Batchelor did a great video of roll tacking. and it's really good. And if you can watch them, and Trish is doing the same thing, and she's backwinding the jib through that, you know, and we got enough breeze and enough power. She's backwinding the jib, which you need to do to help bring the bow of the boat over, and then be able to bring the jib right back in the position that it needs to be. So crew's got it really hard through that process.
So how long do you let the jib backwind?
Until you hear the main fill on the new side, that means you're now probably right on your wind position, and then you can bring that jib over and put it right back into its new position.
Okay, so it could be backwinded for a full second, potentially.
It can
And
be,
it helps
yes.
turn the bow down.
Yeah. Yeah, I argue with my skipper about how long to
Yes, he does.
Who's
to
right
backwind.
about that?
I know who's right about that.
I mean, the three things you have to think about is the first heel is you're heeling over, you're lengthening the water line on this side. That's helping the boat turn up into the wind. So the skipper uses less helm in order to get the boat to initiate the tack. Once you're over onto the new tack, you jump to the other side. By popping the boat over on that side, it gets those sails to fill up on that side. Third one is then you flatten the boat out, and that's the one depending on the wind conditions. Sometimes both people are coming over to flatten it. Sometimes it's just the skipper and the crew kind of just scoots into the middle a little bit. It varies depending on the wind conditions.
Yeah, I mean, if it's real light, you might not want to flatten it.
Yeah, if it's real light, you're going to be on this new leeward side and sailing and keeping the boat driving.
I would argue though that you do actually want to flatten it
Okay,
and then heel it.
let's take a boat.
So why?
The reason being is when you flatten it, it does two things. One, you're creating more lift on your centerboard, which is going to give you a little squirt forward. You're also, as you flatten it, you're generating wind for your sails, which also will give you a little squirt forward.
So typically if it's that light, though, if it's really light and you're going to stay on the leeward side, you don't have enough breeze to do what he's talking about anyway. You're just trying to keep the boat going. So you kind of got to play with that a little bit to see where it makes sense to go in terms of the breeze. So, I mean, he's right. He said all the right things there.
So you're saying in like 2 to 3 knots of wind, you don't re-flatten it.
Yeah, true.
You may a little bit, just a little bit. The skipper may come up halfway and then go back down again, just to kind of get that little drive off, get the sails filled, get the drive off the
And
board.
to initiate the flow over the sail.
Right, right.
You really want to come out of the tack at the same angle of heel as you were when you went into it. So if it's 3 knots and you're heeling to leeward, you want to come out of it heeling that same amount to leeward.
And it's all a feel thing too, because you guys, here's Ryan here, and we'll be able to add some stuff to this conversation. But I mean, the breeze is changing all the time. One time it's 2 knots, the other time it's 1.5 knots, and so you just kind of gotta feel where your boat's at, how high you can heel it. I mean, you just drive it as far as you can with the breeze conditions to try to help drive the boat forward coming out of the tack. Like he said, put the breeze on the new side and get.
When you're hiking the lure, do you get your butt wet? Do you roll it up that high?
No, I have before, but sometimes it's hard. These boats are so beamy. Sometimes it's hard to really.
In a
drive
420, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We teach the kids in the 420, you want your life jacket wet
Yeah.
Okay.
every roll tack.
This
In
one
this
you can't.
boat, it's almost impossible.
It's almost impossible.
So you just roll it over as hard as you roll it up as hard as you can.
Right.
So if
As
you
hard
weigh,
as you can.
if you're 150, if you're 300 pounds, you're not going very far.
I mean, you know when to flatten it out. I mean, the question is when do you flatten it out? Well, you know when to flatten it out is when your boat's heeled up and you're now on the side and you're really heeled up pretty good, which is not good either. You know you need to flatten it out. So it's a feel thing based on how much heel you went back into after your roll tag.
You already said it, but it's really important. He said he over trims to round the boat up.
Yeah.
And he said he eases that main back out a little bit. That's real critical because when you flatten, if your sails are too tight, it'll be a unsuccessful squirt. It won't squirt.
Right. Right. You got to loosen your sails back up. So again, you're pulling that main sheet in to help steer your boat through the turn.
Let's everybody say hi to Ryan. Hey, Ryan. There he is.
Nice and late. Hey.
To answer all the secrets that we've been trying to.
So where are we at now, John?
We were just doing boat handling stuff, talking light air.
Cool. This is what we're going to be doing this weekend.
Talk for a few minutes about halyard tension and light breeze for the main and the jib. What's your thought process there?
just you don't want to overdo it. So make sure that both, especially both of them, are relaxed. So if the hank's on your jib, if you've got crow's feet and you've got a relaxed luff, it can be ugly as fast, I find. So just make sure you don't over tension your halyards. The only time you want to have a lot of tension on your main halyard ever is if you're overpowered, like leaving the dock. It's a really super wind. That's how I sail. Okay. So I always raise the main up all the way, and then I watch the bolt rope, and it gets snug, and then I just let it back a few clicks until you watch the whole bolt rope kind of relax.
Okay. So when you're out on the water and you're going upwind, and let's say there's about 4 to 5 knots, which that's what the forecast is for tomorrow, right? So you set your halyard tension at the dock where you think it's going to be, and you get out on the water and you're going upwind, and you're obviously looking up at the sail. What are you using to help determine whether you bring the halyard, you bring it down, loosen it up a little bit, or put it up a little bit more? What are you looking at?
Honestly, I don't worry too much about the halyards. I mean, seriously, in the light air, it's more about your weight positioning. And Stacy's going to park the car, and she can talk a little bit. In 5 or less, I think it's really huge. Like, get your halyards set ahead of time. Make sure they're not too tight. Okay, but I'm thinking about not having my main trimmed in too much. I'm thinking about not having my jib trimmed in too much, so that they're both open up. The slots opened up, and both of our weight is to leeward. So the boat is to leeward, so the sails can sort of hang in the shape they're designed. So make sure the boat is heeling in the light stuff. Right. And then if it's flat water and it's kind of shifty and light, the other thing that we do, in the really like 3-4 knots, I will try as hard as I can to not use the rudder at all. And how do we do that? What we do is Stacy actually will play the jib by hand in the light stuff, and because when the light stuff, 1 knot increase is going to be a lift, 1 knot decrease is going to be a header. So you're getting all kinds of ups and downs. So what we're doing is she'll be playing the jib, and I'll just, if the lure telltale starts to not break, she'll let it out to keep the telltales both going. And then I'll follow with the main. I'll let my main out, and I try not to steer at all. Try to get your rudder to not do anything in the light stuff. But that's in the really, really light stuff.
Right.
So we're not trying to point.
Right.
We're just trying to drive. Because if you try and point in light stuff, what happens?
It's going to die.
Yeah, you come up and you're like, whoa, look at us go now, and then all of a sudden the wind goes down, and then you start to slow down, and what do you got to do to turn down? You got to use your rudder. If you got to use your rudder, you're just putting a big flat thing sideways back here, and it's slow. So that's really huge.
So Ryan,
and we sit forward too, like.
No, this was downwind I was talking about.
No, you don't have to get out. Like, I'll be sitting really far forward. Right?
So what they're laughing about, because I was talking about downwind and very light air, where weight was back. I wasn't talking about upwind, so.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about upwind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Upwind, you want your weight forward.
Yeah, and unless there's some chop, if it's flat water, which usually, if there's some waves, you don't want to have your weight too far forward because the bow is really going to hit them. But mainly, we get our weight to leeward, so that the boats, again, the sails are sort of in their shape. And usually in the light stuff, the corner of my boom is out all the way to the corner of the transom. So, because if you try and pull that main in, what's going to happen is the leech is going to tighten up. It's already too tight because of the weight of the boom, but it's going to be worse if you try and trim it in at all. You want to open up the sails, open up the slot, and so I'll be forward. I'll be sitting like right here. Stacy's like here. Remember John and I sailed one time together in Florida. Tell him what we did, John. Remember he was crewing for me.
Yeah.
I was super light.
Yeah. So I was just ballast, right? And I was hiking like crazy in some really light stuff, and we were just out motoring everybody.
Yeah, John was using the hiking line, and your butt was almost in the water, right?
Yeah.
You were working really hard, and we were keeping the boat on its side.
Yeah.
It really helped. That's extreme drifter stuff. Right. We shouldn't even be racing on that stuff usually. That was like 1 to 2 knots, right? So that's an extreme thing. So I probably shouldn't be talking too much about
How far over did you say the boom was when it's pretty light?
Usually it's out by the corner, the transom.
Right on the corner.
Yeah.
where is it, Brian?
And I can't see that. And I'm sorry. Yeah.
The boom's on the corner. Where's your top bat?
Well, it's probably hooked a little bit because of the weight of the boom.
Boom. But it should be twisted out.
You wish if we had a hydraulic vane that would lift the weight of the boom, that would be wonderful because it would take the weight off that leach and it would open it up. But it helps to have it at least sort of by letting it out. At least, yeah, it's kind of hooked, but at least it's not hooked this way. It's hooked out a little bit. I mean, I'm not verbalizing it very well. I just drove a lot. But it's, you know what I mean? It's angled outboard a little bit.
All right, and then with that scenario, where's the jib?
So the jib is
Where's that top batten on the jib?
open
Open.
in the lighter stuff. And again, what we'll do, in the really light stuff, if the wind is kind of up and down, like going from 3 to 5 or shifting a little bit back and forth, Stacy will play the jib by hand. She'll hold the clue.
So
Or the
she's
line,
jet-
or hold the line right here, and I can't see my masthead fly usually in that stuff. So all I'll do is if I see that, and she's just staring at that jib like a spinnaker almost. So what's happening? If you're going along, when in doubt, let it out, right? So that if you let it out, that's a better idea than over trimming it. So if you're not sure, let it out a little bit. Make sure that lure telltale is always flowing. That's the key. If that outside telltale stops breaking, that means you're over trimmed. And that's like death. So she'll keep that jib open, and when I see her let it out because of a little bit of a lift, I'll let out my main a little bit too.
But go
and again,
straight.
I'll try not to use the rudder. Now, if we start to really speed up, then what can we do if we start to really speed up?
Trim.
Yeah, now we can trim a little bit, and we can try to get a little bit of height and go up. That's my dog. But it's all a matter. So now, if we see tomorrow, I think the forecast is starting to come on more like 6 or 7 knots. So that's a little different. In 6 or 7 knots, that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking more like 4 or 5 knots. In 6 or 7 knots, we'll have the jib. We're going along pretty decent speed, and the jib. Hopefully, you're going full speed, and you'll have that top batten parallel, straight back. But you just never want it hooked ever on the jib. And every time I do a clinic, I got to say this because this is like the most common mistake I've seen people do is they have their mains in like the 7 to 15, they have their mains under trimmed and their jibs over trimmed. So you got the main out and the jib in. It's the worst possible combination because that jib is just choking off the slot. So you need to keep that slot working between the sails so that the wind can sort of funnel through there. And people also say to me, hey, I can't point in this light stuff. You shouldn't be trying to point. Really, you got to keep your boat going fast. And if you get it going fast, then you can at times work your way up. But if you try and really point a lot, you're going to stall, and that's going to be slow. So usually, also you need a game plan, right? Which side of the lake to go to. And I hope somebody will tell me which way we should go. Because I've been.
Is this correct thinking if you're going fast in light wind and you're not trying to point, isn't the lift you get from your foils kind of helping you point and you don't realize it?
Yeah. The rudder, not the rudder, excuse me. I wish the rudder would, but it's the center board. Yeah, once you get going, you do get some flow and hydrodynamic flow over the center board, and it will actually start to pull you towards weather, and that actually creates a lifting effect on the boat. So you do. When you start going faster, you can point a little bit higher.
So that's the kind of thinking that got me away from trying to point. And, the fact that the speed is more important.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah, because but people, they a lot of times people also who are really worried about pointing, I think what's happening is they're looking at other boats and just trying to concentrate on your own boat because it's really hard to tell relative position, I think. And there'll be moments when somebody else might have gotten the speed that you're talking about and they start to point, and this guy down here is like, why can't I do that? And he decides, well, I'm going to try and do that. And he didn't have the speed to do it, and now he stalls and over trims his main or whatever. Because we're all in our little micro systems doing our own thing, just trying to make your boat go as fast as possible at all times.
How much do you pay attention to the leech telltale versus on the jib versus other indicators?
Honestly, I'm not a big leech.
Or maybe it's your crew that you want looking at it, but
that's a really tough one for me because I don't look at it as much as most people. A lot of times it's not really flowing that well. I really pay attention to the luff telltales and more the top batten on the jib. And another thing is on my main, I don't really look too much deep, but some people really look at that telltale on the top batten. You guys, Sean, do you do that a lot?
Not so much upwind because it's not going to flow that often.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just not flowing, right? Because I feel like you can't point. When you do want to point, when you've got good speed, if that top's opened up too much, you're not going to be able to. If you really want to point, you should be able to get it hooked a little bit. And the main on the main, you can hook your top batten at times to go fast. You just can never do that with a jib. Never, never, never should that top batten be hooking.
I mean, so for me, I'm always trying to get the batten on the jib. I'm trying to get that thing basically pointed on the center line of the boat.
When you're up to full speed.
When you're up to full speed, or I always tell my crew to bring it in till it just starts to stall, and then let it back out to get it flowing, to try to get it back into that right position. So, I mean, that's what I'm looking at. A lot of times I've got juniors on board that don't know how to trim the jib, and so as an indicator on where they need to trim to is what I'm trying to give them a visual on.
Yeah, and it's helpful. You can put a little bit of. See, John's got electrician's tape, so you can it gives you a reference point. But keep in mind also is if the wind goes down 2 knots, what was perfect before is now hooked, and if the wind goes up a few knots, you probably need to trim it in because it'll actually open up as the wind increases. So it is a constant adjustment thing, but it is really nice to have. Right. So you can tell you're somebody on just get it in until it's 2 inches off, right? Because you don't want to right after you tack. The last thing you want to do is you don't want to over trim your sails too soon, especially your jib too soon. Right. So make sure, especially in the lighter stuff, after you tack, sail with your sails open. You can feel the boat accelerating. Once it starts accelerating, now you can start trying to bring them in and work up a little bit. Right. It just takes a lot of practice.
It does.
But I think wait for it. So another thing I see is people too far back a lot in the lighter stuff. I think.
And sitting in the windward.
And sitting on both sides of the boat, and the sails are straight. The mast is straight up in the air, and the sails are just look like bed sheets. They're just like hanging there. So make sure your weight positioning is really. And actually, weight is one of the more important things in all type wind conditions.
Yeah.
So if it's windy, we wish we had more weight. We're hiking our buns off, right? Right. It sounds like this is going to be a light air experience this weekend.
Yeah. Well, if it's 6 or 7 knots, that'll be great.
Yeah, gusting higher is the forecast right now. Gusting 12.
Really?
6, 8, gusting to 10, 12. That'd be pretty
ideal.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the main leech telltales?
Sure.
Now, we typically just have one on the top batten. Right?
Yep.
Now, one of our top racers in our club, he uses competition sails over there. And he has another one on the next one down.
Some people like to have 2. Oh,
yeah, and he likes to keep that one flying pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend that or not? Or?
Again, I think that's a style thing. I really don't use the telltales on my leech of my main. I just don't look at them even.
It becomes a feel thing. I think what Ryan is saying. And when I started, I would look at that all the time to see, because that was the school of thought, is to keep the air flowing across your sails. But as I got a little more experienced, I realized you're not going to be able to point with that flowing off the top telltale. You've got to hook that main every once in a while. And if you got the breeze and pressure to do it, you can do that. You can't keep it there all the time, but you're kind of working your main a little bit and trying to drive your boat to windward, working off the top leech of your sail.
Yeah,
I do think it's great if you're looking up there, though.
The second one because the top one's hooked. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, the second one's more flowing.
If you're heeling the boat to leeward, you're not going to see much of the leech anyway.
You're
it's
not.
really hard to
That's
know.
why I go by what my crew is doing with the jib.
Yeah.
Like in the lighter stuff, I'm just going to follow suit, right? You can't
and if you turn your clicker off, or if you've got an auto ratchet, you can sort of turn your, get it so you can feel the weight of it.